Who here was for our wilderness first aid training about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago? Got like 3 or 4 hands, right? For those of you who were there, right, we had the opportunity to have the campfire, and it was really literally the first time some of us had met. But this, to have everybody here, I want to stress again how cool and how awesome and important it is that you're here. You are responsible for helping create a national movement of Latino and Latino professionals across the environment. So don't be afraid, take that step forward. I know it's okay, it's natural to not know because we're building and growing this together. But just know that I get phone calls and emails and everything letting us know that what we do is really admired and respected. So I'm really proud of what you're all doing.
I think it's very difficult to have one definition of what Latino culture is in this country. I think one of the things that unifies us as a people is la comunidad latina, el cariño y el respeto que le tiene la naturaleza. It's historic. It's part of our being. It's in our DNA.
Our culture is very outdoorsy. It's very nature related. We have this idea of nature and the outdoors, but we haven't connected back into it here in the United States.
There's large parts of our population, Latino community being a significant one, that are very underrepresented on our public lands, that aren't using these beautiful open spaces that we have, and whose stories aren't being told as we tell the history of this nation. And that's why reaching into communities of color and the Latino community in particular is going to be so important for the future of our public lands.
I want to be present. I want to show that I'm here and participating and having our voice be heard, and making sure that our stories get told.
We're not a new community. There might be different pieces of us that are, new communities, but we have a history in this country, literally since the founding of the United States. Since 1776, there has been a Latino story to all of these spaces. A big piece of how this matters now is that demographics have continued to shift, so that all of the conservation successes we've had could before rely on one main demographic, which is, our current and past conservation leadership, our predominantly male white leadership. And that's important because we accomplished a lot with that. But as the demographics shift, we need to understand how all communities have a stake in this.
Nature means a healing place for me. It is a space where I can be present. It's a space where I can feel myself.
To me, nature is about fun and peace and calm.
It starts from childhood. So my dad was a big hunter, and he was also a fisherman, but mostly a hunter, and he would take us out, take the whole family camping. One thing you know about Latinos, we bring our whole family along for the adventure.
And I was very fortunate that my family really enjoyed going to visit those places and going camping, whatever way we could. You know, we might not have had the fanciest equipment or whatever, but we made it work.
Growing up, 8 years old, 9 years old, exploring Redwood Park and bonding with my brothers, bonding with yourself, bonding with nature, I told myself, like, if I can work at any national park, that'd be a dream come true.
I'm a happier person if I'm in the backcountry and when I don't have just the distractions of just everyday life. And I think we all have a right to that, just kind of that experience, to be able to get away from it and just kind of find oneself and be able to explore just these just natural worlds.
So I can look at a tree, I can go and see what's around a trail, the wildlife. And I'm not limited to just thinking, here's an ecological system, right? But rather I also think about, you know, we're actually on a historic trail that maybe we didn't know. That means that Latino families through the history of California also walk this trail. Or I'll look at it and think about the way in which my grandparents or my grandmother, you know, would say that's actually a medicinal plant. That's a whole different way of thinking. So that's where my Latino identity comes in.
Nature is really all around our community, and you just kind of have to look for it a little bit harder than what you experience when you go to a national park. It's there and it's grand and it's ever present. But when you come back to your hood and you have to keep that relationship going, it takes a little bit more work to find those places. And the idea here, I think, is to get to a place where we don't have to work so hard to find those green and open spaces in the hood, in the community, in the barrios where our people and communities live.
I love like the feel of my feet in the dirt, and it's like you know, I really can't sit still, like so I have to always be active, and it kind of irritates my current immediate family because they like to read books, but I can't go a week without going for a hike on the trail or being outside. Whenever I grew up, there was always a turtle, those desert tortoises, and they would come around, and sometimes we'd see one, and then they'd come, and then they'd disappear for a year. And there was one that, when I was growing up, they lived for a long time, so I was growing up, and it had this little chip on its, on the front. And my dad died 4 years ago, and I went back to stay with my mom in his last days, and a couple days before he died, I was out in the backyard, and I saw that tortoise with the little chip. And I was like, oh wow, that tortoise, I can't believe it's still alive. And then afterwards, after my dad died, I thought, wow, that tortoise, it came to say goodbye to my dad. And maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but just that connection to nature and that tortoise like had something to do with what was happening in real life.
I started Latino Outdoors because I was looking for a place to belong. And what that means is the idea of what my own cultural exploration and figuring out was. Like, what does it mean to have a Latino identity? That in itself is very complex. And at the same time, what it meant to have a passion and love for the outdoors, which is its own cultural identity that I don't think a lot of people know or fully understand. And even though I could feel at home in my Latino culture, and I could feel at home in the outdoors, how those came together didn't quite fit yet. So it started with me literally going onto a search engine, looking for the domain names, noticing they were available, in starting a blog. And the idea of the blog was later into a website to tell my story and saying, if I put my story out there, how will this resonate and connect with the stories of others like me? And that's how it started. And that name and identity has been carried now by myself and other amazing volunteers from Central Park in New York to Saguaro National Park down in Tucson, over to Lassen National Park in California, all the way up to the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Now you can go onto a search engine, type in Latinos or Latino Outdoors, and that identity is there.
Okay, I'm Josh. I work for the LA Conservation Corps. And the reason we're here is to educate the community about the river, that this is an actual river, it's not a ditch that people just race their cars in like you see in the movies. And you won't be chased by the Terminator. I could say because like, you know, my ancestors came here illegally. They talk about, you know, the Rio Grande, you know, they pass a river, and just being able to see a river, you know, here in Los Angeles, having a river, it's just having, because you could probably say everybody, no matter if you're rich or poor, you know, whatever nationality, water is the fundamental of life. You automatically gravitate to water, and it's something that everybody has in common. Probably some of the exciting stuff is dealing with the younger crowd, like the teenagers, because sometimes they don't even go hiking, they don't even go to the beach, and then they come here and they're like, what is this place? And they like, oh, I can't swim, and it's just like, I don't know how to do this. But once we get them in there, get them comfortable, and they start smiling, and then they realize like, wow, you know, there's an actual world other than seeing that stuff through my phone, and that's why I love doing this. It's still untouched, you know, it's untouched by man, you know, you could say, even though you see lots of, you know, remnants from the city, you know, all this awesome trash that they have. But, you know, just being able to see lots of vegetation, lots of greenery, you know, water and animals in the middle of the city, that's what makes it special. It's like a little oasis, you know, in the middle of the concrete jungle.
So Latino Outdoors just had the first national leadership campout, where it was an opportunity for our volunteers, our leaders, to come together, physically be in the same space, in the same outdoor space, to camp together, to basically be ourselves, be themselves in this space, and support each other, and teach each other, and laugh with each other, and something as simple as help each other set up a tent, help each other show how to pack a backpack. It was a big deal because a lot of our volunteer base, you know, we all start with the excitement and passion, but being only connected through online means. So to physically be in an outdoor space, as many of us as could gather together, it's a big deal because that's where that sense of community comes in, and it matters. To be able to reinforce what that idea means, that we all belong here and are here together, and we are all expressing that very identity that's driving us to do all of this in the same space. To be able to say, here we are, in the same space, growing as a community and supporting each other like that.
I was old school. People have always said, Rojas, you were born, you know, way too late. You should have been an old school ranger back in the day when, you know, it was just hiking around the park and carrying a thermos and chatting with visitors. And during the day, I would take kids on a nature hike or do some junior ranger activities. And then in the evening, go to each of the campsites, and where there were problems like too many cars or too loud or some problem that I know that's going to be reported later, I would go and do a preventative talk. You know, when you get a minute, I know you're busy, move the car to the extra lot so things aren't crowded in here. And lower your radio, you know, your neighbors aren't reporting anything, but we don't want to come back and bother you later. You know, those kinds of things. While I was on patrol at Donner Memorial State Park one evening in the summer, I came to a campsite and there was 6 cars when there should have been 2, maybe 3. I thought I was pretty polite. I said, when you get a minute, you know, you've got too many vehicles, I see you're unloading, but the lot's gonna fill up, so you wanna move some when you can. And this gentleman went ballistic. Just went absolutely nuts. Long story short, there was a problem across the road from this particular campsite during the night. And the other campers across the road pointed to this man who had these too many cars as being the reporting party. So somehow, someone in the angry group across the way thought the other original reporting, or the original camper was the reporting party, and they slashed his tires. So the next morning, my supervisor wakes up to this guy knocking on the office door with this scathing letter about the Mexican Ranger slashing the tires on his truck during the night because I wouldn't move the vehicles. So, you know, it's like I thought I did everything right, and here I get accused of doing something so wrong. So that was kind of a low point in my career, and I've always thought of that. When I had a similar low point, I would just push away that one, because I knew it would get better, and it did. So I think we've come a long way. I'm so excited when I check in on social media and learn all the different activities that different groups are doing to connect kids with the outdoors, especially with Latino Outdoors. Finding the transportation to get the kids from the housing project to, you know, a local regional park or a state park, or maybe getting a camping, a backpacking experience together for a dozen high schoolers that had never backpacked in the Sierras before to do that for the first time. Those are the kinds, the incremental gains that make life for all Californians better. And that's my hope for the future, that all of us can leave these places, these beautiful places, historic places, quiet places, that enrich our lives always better than we find them.
Latino Outdoors was this little dot that was me moving on a map. Now it's a lot of these dots, taking dozens of families outdoors. We've had over 100 outings that have taken everyone from 5-year-olds all the way to 70, 80-year-olds. To go from the trail, taking families out to connect with their nearby park or their state park or their national park or any open space, to going up to the halls of Congress, to the White House itself, in carrying that voice, in carrying those stories. To be an advocate on the trail, but also in the halls of Congress is definitely a new experience. But it's just as important. Our voice and our presence is not just coast to coast, but from the trailhead all the way to the table of our national officials.
Raul Grijalva, member of Congress. I represent the 3rd District in Arizona, southern Arizona, primarily along the 300 miles of the border. Antes que falleció mi papá, yo y mi hermana y mi mamá lo llevamos al Gran Cañón. Tenía 76 años y nunca en su vida, viviendo toda la vida ahí, ha ido al Gran Cañón. Y esa experiencia para él y para mí fue muy profunda, porque este pueblo, siendo parte de la historia y de la vida de la región, que nunca en su vida ha ido a un parque público, nunca ha ido quizás al parque más importante que tenemos en los Estados Unidos, el Gran Cañón, y ir a verlo.
whether you are a first-generation immigrant or your family has been here for more than 6 generations. We have been here, we are here. And whether you come from a different nationality, be it Puerto Riqueño, Mexicano, Salvadoreño, these are our public lands. And if you've ever wondered or asked yourself, maybe that's not for me, I don't see myself there, or I don't trust maybe being in those spaces, I don't feel that who's there will support me or welcome me. The message is we belong in these spaces just as much as anybody else. These are your public lands, these are our public lands, these are my public lands.
Our journey doesn't end by being able to take everybody outside to a national park. Our journey continues when we're able to sustain that relationship and build a conservation legacy that is really reflective of the diversity that's in this world.
To see the participation by the Latino community in the usage, the participation of our special places.
More Latinos, more faces in the field, more rangers with flat hats.
When we build bridges to let families know that this is it's accessible for them.
These lands are your lands. Please enjoy them. Please be a steward of them. Please take a child by the hand from your community and bring them into the great outdoors.
Start somewhere. Start where you're at. And again, it might be that you apply for a job, or it might just be that you go to a computer and look on a website and figure out where the nearest park is near you.
Even though you're not a hardcore hiker or kayaker or extreme sports person, connecting with nature is important for us. It rejuvenates our health, and it simplifies a lot of complex things that we deal with on a daily basis. So get outdoors. Take your children outdoors.
We're here and ready, and we are the future of the conservation movement.
We are here. Our voices count. Our presence counts very much. And I would like to see more of us out here and meet people on the trail and say, you know, this is wonderful. I love to see you on the trail, or I saw you on a camp out, and here I am again. Estamos aquí.
Whether your family is primarily Spanish-speaking, recent immigrant, whether you have a deep heritage as an Hispano from the Southwest, we all have roots in these spaces. These are the trails, these are the spaces for our stories. These are the spaces for us. So we belong here. We have been here. Estamos aquí, we are going to be here, and we have a responsibility to be present in our public lands. Que no se los olviden, estamos aquí.
Okay. We are here. Estamos aquí.
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 Estamos